Hello and welcome to Firstpost. You're watching Vantage with me, Alyson le Grange. Is the Gaza war spreading to Lebanon? That's our top focus tonight. Israel's defense minister has issued a warning. He says Israel can take Lebanon back to the Stone Age if it wants to. How will the Hezbollah react to this? Is Lebanon ready for war? And how will it affect the region? We'll decode all of that on the show. Meanwhile, NATO has got a new leader, former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. What does he bring to the table? How will he handle the war in Ukraine? In Bolivia, an apparent coup attempt, but the coup leader says the president put him up to it. Who do we believe, and how did the operation unfold? We have a special report. We are also counting down to the first presidential debate. Joe Biden is taking on Donald Trump. What should you expect from this clash? And speaking of debates, we had one in the UK. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak took on Labour leader Keir Starmer. Who won that interaction? Stay tuned to find out. And have you heard about AI washing? If not, don't miss our report. All this and more lined up, but first the headlines. Former Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu expelled from the ruling Communist Party. Last year, he was abruptly sacked in unexplained circumstances. Li is suspected of accepting bribes and has been accused of abusing his position. Two ultra-conservative candidates pull out of Iran's presidential race just a day before the elections. This leaves four contenders, including one reformist, in the fray. The elections in Iran were brought forward after President Ebrahim Raisi's death in a helicopter crash in May. A historic day for the domestic benchmark indices in India. Sensex goes past the 79,000 mark for the first time. The Nifty also hits a lifetime high. The main drivers behind the rise were the return of foreign institutional investors to the domestic market and growing purchases in index heavyweights. Kazakhstan will hold a referendum this year on whether to build what could become Central Asia's first nuclear power plant. Kazakhstan is the world's largest exporter of uranium, but in 1999 it shut its only small-scale reactor that was mainly used for water desalination. And the South African men's cricket team reached their first ever ICC final. They beat Afghanistan in a low-scoring match in the T20 World Cup semi-final. South Africa will now face either India or England in the final on Saturday. We begin with the war in Gaza. It's been raging for more than 260 days. In this time, we have talked about a second front, a possible war with Lebanon's Hezbollah. Well, it's not a distant possibility anymore. It's very much on the cards. On Wednesday, Israeli fighter jets targeted Lebanon. They hit a Hezbollah military structure. They also bombed several other locations in the south. Now, this incident wasn't isolated. It's part of an escalating trend at the border. Hezbollah has fired 5,000 rockets at Israel since last October. Of course, Israel has responded in kind. They have taken out more than 300 Hezbollah fighters. One such attack happened earlier this month. An Israeli strike killed a senior Hezbollah commander. Back then, the group's leader issued a warning to Israel. He said Hezbollah was ready for war. Yet the aggression hasn't stopped. On Tuesday, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the northern frontier. He also met some reservist soldiers. Israel says it's winding down the operations in Gaza, meaning it can focus more on Lebanon. The question is, can war still be avoided? Well, the United States is keen to avert it. Israel's defense minister has just wrapped up a trip to the US. He met Pentagon chief Lloyd, and among the issues discussed was Hezbollah. Israel says it will only attack if provoked.
Our war is not with the people of Lebanon. Our war is against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and their backers, the Iranian regime. We are committed, and I am personally committed, to facilitating the delivery of essential humanitarian aid to Gaza. We only fight those who seek to harm us.
Later on, the defense minister sharpened his words. He said Israel could bomb Lebanon back to the Stone Age if it wanted to. So tonight, let's look at the second front. How dangerous is it? And how would the fighting pan out? For starters, the Hezbollah is not the Hamas. They are better trained and better equipped. Hezbollah has more than 150,000 missiles and rockets. They also have close to 50,000 fighters, not ragtag mercenaries. We're talking about battle-hardened troops. Many of them fought in the 2006 war against Israel, and that conflict actually ended in a stalemate. Since then, Hezbollah's capabilities have improved. Last week, they released this drone footage. It shows sensitive locations like ports and airports in the city of Haifa. It was Hezbollah's way of saying, we can hit you where we like. Plus, the group has outside support. Iran is a key backer of this group. In fact, Hezbollah is the most important part of Iran's West Asian axis. Even the likes of Turkey are backing them.
We should not provide an opportunity for this. Turkey is with the brotherly people of Lebanon and its state. I invite the other countries in the region to stand in solidarity with Lebanon.
Support will also come from the Houthis, another group aligned with Iran. The Houthis operate from Yemen. They have been targeting ships in the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea.
The Yemeni armed forces, alongside the Iraqi Islamic resistance, carried out a joint military operation targeting the Israeli ship in the port of Haifa with a number of drones. The operation has successfully achieved its objectives.
Finally, you have Iran. They will have a new president by next week, a leader who will be eager to consolidate power. So Tehran will not stand by if Hezbollah is attacked. They may use their proxies to strike Israel, or they may get involved directly. Either way, it means more escalation in the region. But here's the interesting part. Neither side is ready for such an escalation. Lebanon's economy is in the dumps. Around 33% of their people live in poverty. So the country is in no position to bankroll a war. Israel's problem is political. Netanyahu's strategy in Gaza is already unpopular. Thousands of Israelis are protesting against him. They want a new government to bring the hostages back. So can Netanyahu really afford another war? Logic says no. But Netanyahu's strategy has often contradicted logic. He has used dangerous escalations to cling onto power. We saw that earlier this year. The US was becoming vocal in its criticism of Israel. So Netanyahu took out senior Iranian commanders in Syria. This triggered a chain of events in West Asia. First, Iran launched a direct attack on Israel, which forced the US to bury its differences with Netanyahu. Now we are seeing a repeat of that strategy. Instead of Iran, Netanyahu is poking Hezbollah. Let's hope common sense prevails on both sides, because a second front could prove even more disastrous, not just for Lebanon, but for Israel too. Now let's talk about NATO. The world's largest military alliance has a new leader, Mark Rutte, the outgoing Dutch Prime Minister. He is taking charge at a critical moment. The war in Ukraine is testing Western unity. Europe needs to beef up its defenses. But the changing political landscape is testing NATO's unity. How will Mark Rutte tackle these complex issues? Our next report decodes the challenges.
Mark Rutte will be NATO's new Secretary General. As the future leader of the world's largest military alliance, His background is quite unconventional. Rutte holds a degree in history. Before becoming the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, he worked in the private sector as a human resources manager. Maybe his people skills are just what the NATO needs now. The Dutch know him as Teflon Mark. Rutte spent 12 years in office, leading 4 coalition governments during that time. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. His government faced numerous scandals, including one over child welfare fraud in 2021. But Rutte not just managed to navigate his way out of these crises, he continued to keep the top job, without any stain on his image. On the international stage, he proved to be an effective operator as well. Rutte forged strong relationships with a diverse set of leaders, from Germany's Angela Merkel to French President Emmanuel Macron, even former US President Donald Trump. Rutte had everyone's ear. As the chief of NATO, his coalition-building skills will be put to the test again. His biggest challenge will be the war in Ukraine. As Prime Minister of the Netherlands, he has been a strong ally for Kiev.
We must stop the Russian aggression, Putin's aggression, together with our partners and allies, united, determined, in solidarity. That is the only way.
But not all NATO members share the same feelings. Countries like Hungary were initially opposed to his candidacy. Viktor Orban had placed a veto on Rutte's name. The Hungarian leader wanted some assurances. He didn't want his troops to be deployed to deal with the crisis in Ukraine. Orban was also against spending Hungary's money on the war. Rutte had to agree to those demands. He may face more pushback in the months ahead. Next month, NATO leaders will meet in the US for an important summit. The alliance will mark its 75th anniversary. It needs to address critical gaps in its deterrence. The war in Ukraine has exposed the limits within NATO's defense manufacturing capabilities. Leading NATO members in Europe, like the UK, Germany, France and Italy, are facing shrinking troop numbers. Plus, there is a budget shortfall to address.
At the summit, we will also address NATO's deterrence and defense, including investment. And as you mentioned, President, I strongly welcome that this year a record of 23 allies, including France, will invest at least 2% of GDP on defense.
Mark Rutte will formally take over in October, but all these challenges will be on his mind. And he needs to hit the ground running right away.
A Hollywood action flick is unfolding in Bolivia. An attempted coup, a hallway altercation, soldiers on the streets, and finally, a return to calm. It's truly been a nervous 24 hours for the South American country. But what exactly happened? On Wednesday, soldiers and armored vehicles gathered in La Paz. They moved in on the place called Morelos Square. That's where Bolivia's government is seated. The presidential palace is also there. An armored vehicle rammed into the palace gates. Once it was opened, the soldiers flooded in. Take a look. By now, the picture was clear. A section of the military had rebelled. They were staging a coup d'etat, and leading them was this man, a former military chief named Juan José Zuniga. His motives remain unclear. On Monday, he had criticized the current president's predecessor, Evo Morales, a man who ruled Bolivia from 2006 to 2019. The next day, he was removed as military chief. So the assumption is he was disgruntled. Once the general entered the palace, the president confronted him. That's Luis Arce. He took charge in 2020 after a period of instability. Now the pictures were quite dramatic. They show the president facing off with the revolting general. Take a look.
Presidente Arce está ahí, hablando con el general Zúñiga.
With soldiers inside the palace, the president turned to his strength, the people of Bolivia. He addressed them from inside the palace. He asked them to take to the streets to protect democracy.
Today, we need the Bolivian people to organize and mobilize against the coup and in favor of democracy. We cannot allow that once again coup attempts claim Bolivian lives.
And it worked. Hundreds of protesters hit the streets. They took on the rebellious Bolivian soldiers. It was indeed a wise strategy. Bolivia has a history of being ruled by military dictators. Their reigns have the same template: unstable, violent, and corrupt. So ordinary Bolivians did not want to return to that. They made sure the plotting soldiers knew their position. And the pressure worked. Loyal security officials repelled the coup. They also arrested the rebellious general. Afterwards, the president appointed a new military chief. He asked all revolting soldiers to return to their units. In simple words, the coup was thwarted and democracy won. The coup leader was paraded in front of the cameras. The president also gave a victory speech from the palace balcony. Listen in.
Hemos reaccionado.
They wanted to surprise us and surprise the Bolivian people. We have reacted, and the mobilized people have also allowed us to reverse this coup attempt today. Thank you, Bolivian people.
Gracias, pueblo boliviano.
We called this a Hollywood flick, so get ready for the plot twist. As we mentioned, there is no apparent reason for this coup. Plus, it was poorly planned, no robust strategy, no plan of action, and certainly no popular support. The whole thing was terminated and thwarted in 3 hours. Makes you wonder, why did the general do it? As he was being taken away, the coup leader dropped a major claim. He said the president asked him to stage the coup.
The president told me, the situation is very complicated. This week is going to be critical, so it is necessary to prepare something to boost my popularity. So I asked, do we take out the armored vehicles? President Arce said, take them out. So on Monday, not Sunday night, the armored vehicles begin to descend.
Some opposition politicians also agree. They are calling it a self-coup, an operation organized to boost the president's popularity. But why would he do something like that? Let's look at Bolivia's story. At the turn of the 21st century, it was an economic miracle. Bolivia brought its poverty rate to 15%. It also became a major gas supplier. But recently, the economy has struggled, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. The IMF is projecting a growth rate of 1.6%. Excluding the pandemic period, that's the lowest in 25 years. Foreign exchange is another problem. Bolivia's reserves stood at $1.7 billion in 2023, the lowest in 19 years. So President Arce is under a lot of pressure. Evo Morales is also looming over him. Morales is a socialist icon in Bolivia. He is also a former ally of Arce. But both men have grown apart in recent years. And Morales is now plotting a political comeback. He plans to contest next year's election. So the bottom line is, there are a lot of variables at play. Will this coup plot help the president handle them? Well, the people responded with enthusiasm. That's a clear tick mark. Even regional leaders were quick to support him.
As I am a lover of democracy, I want democracy to prevail in Latin America. Coups have never worked.
We condemn the attempted coup, and we call for the institutions to function, for the Constitution and laws to be respected.
And we are denouncing, from Venezuela, a coup against Bolivian democracy.
That's another tick. But was this coup a real attempt to snatch power, or was it staged to help the president? As a general rule, we must always believe the president over a coup leader. The rest depends on the investigation. The coup leader now faces up to 20 years in prison. Let's see what the probe reveals. In the United States, it's that time of year again, the time for presidential debates. Every 4 years, U.S. presidential candidates battle it out on stage. It allows candidates to be in the spotlight. It's a way to woo voters and a way to make the opponent look bad. This time, it is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Now, U.S. presidential debates are standard practice. It's been happening for decades, but this one is quite unusual. There's a lot that is new about this debate. One, it's a current president debating a former president. That's never happened before in U.S. history. Two, CNN is hosting the debate. Usually, it's the job of the Commission on Presidential Debates. It's a non-partisan body. It conducts presidential debates, but for the first time in 3 decades, a U.S. media network is doing it first. 3, it is one of the earliest debates in history. The elections are in November. We are in the month of June. Debates usually happen closer to the polls. Plus, none of the 2 candidates have been officially nominated, so a debate now makes no sense. 4, there is no live audience. It's a major departure from past debates. This deprives candidates of the momentum of having supporters. 5, microphones will be cut when speaking time is over, so there will be no speaking over each other. But Trump will get the last word. And last, it's the age of the candidates. Biden is 81 years old. If he wins, he will be the oldest U.S. president at 82 years of age. By the time he completes his term, he will be 86. Trump, on the other hand, is 78. These 2 are the oldest candidates to run for the U.S. presidency, which makes age quite a significant factor this time. For 90 minutes, voters will focus on just one thing: how the candidates conduct themselves. Will Biden take a tumble? Will he get lost for words again? Or will Trump lose track of what he was saying? That's something people will keep an eye out for. Some 73 million people viewed the first Biden-Trump presidential debate in 2020. So all eyes are on this one too. But it looks like Americans are not too happy with the choices they have. The new poll suggests half of all Americans think this debate is important for Biden. 4 out of 10 think it's crucial for Trump. So all eyes are on the 2 candidates. Which brings us to the debate itself. Will it be a friendly affair? It's highly unlikely. This is the first time Biden will be in the same room as Trump since 2020, and the last debate wasn't really smooth.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Why
because,
would you answer that
because
question?
the question is, the question is,
Justice,
the
radical
question,
left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen.
So what will the 2 candidates focus on? For Trump, there are 2 key issues: economy and immigration. Voters believe Trump would do better on them. For Biden, it's abortion and health care. Voters feel he will do better on them. But Biden has another trump card. It's the former president's conviction. Polls suggest the guilty verdict could cost Trump some support, especially among the swing voters. Biden would want to capitalize on that. Are the 2 candidates prepared enough? Biden has spent the week off the radar. He is at the Camp David retreat near Washington. Reports suggest that he is fine-tuning his attack lines in mock debates. Trump's preparation has been more relaxed. He's had some dress rehearsals. He has also addressed rallies. Trump's aides want him to focus on economy. Meanwhile, the Biden camp seeks to paint Trump as unfit for office. So the stage is set. But no matter what the outcome of the debate is, it's too soon to take a call. Like I said before, this is one of the earliest presidential debates. It's happening months before the polls. So by the time November comes, it will be a blip in the memory of Americans. Even if there's damage, both candidates will have time to do damage control. They have another debate in September. That could have a more direct impact. So while this debate may be the first on the calendar, but it is unlikely to do more than set the tone for the months to come. Now let's talk about another debate, one that took place last night on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. It was the final debate between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, between Britain's outgoing Prime Minister and the man set to be his successor. Because unlike in the US, Britain's election isn't a close contest. Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party has been in power for 14 years, and right now they are deeply unpopular. They trail Starmer's Labour Party by 20 points in the opinion polls. Starmer is expected to win a record majority, so last night's debate wasn't really likely to change much. Despite this reality, the debate was a somewhat fiery affair. Both prime ministerial candidates came out swinging, and both managed to land some jabs. Here's our report.
You know where these people come from?
No, he's not answering the question.
Do you know where they come from? Iran, Syria, Afghanistan. So when Keir Starmer says he's going to return people, is he going to sit down? Are you going to sit down with the Iranian ayatollahs? Are you going to try and do a deal with the Taliban? It's completely nonsensical what you are saying, right?
A sharp rebuke by Sunak on the issue of migration. Britain's sitting Prime Minister was ready for a fight. Yesterday's debate was the last one before the election. The UK goes to polls next week. Every opinion poll expects Sunak to get wiped out. So he didn't have much to lose last night. And that may be why he decided to come out all guns blazing. His opponent, Keir Starmer, is the leader of the Labour Party. He's expected to win next week's election by a landslide. Not because he's popular, but because people are fed up with Sunak's Conservative Party. The Conservatives, or Tories, have ruled the UK for 14 years. In this time, they've had 5 prime ministers. They went through Brexit. Their economy is in turmoil. And during COVID, the Tories angered everyone by partying during lockdown. All these missteps have led to public anger. The Tories are 20 points behind Starmer and his Labour Party in opinion polls. Starmer is on the verge of becoming Prime Minister, so all he really had to do was survive Sunak's onslaught last night. He even managed a few zingers of his own.
And I just want to address Beverly's point.
You opposed it when I announced it. You literally opposed it.
If you listen to people in the audience across the country more often, you might not be quite so out of touch. Beverly.
That was a quick comeback from Starmer, and he hit Sunak where it hurt. Sunak, who is Britain's richest ever Prime Minister, has struggled to make himself seem relatable. His recent comments about growing up without Sky TV didn't really endear him to the masses. But aside from the jibes, the debate was largely what you would have expected. Starmer was criticising everything that Sunak and the Tories have done over the years, including the most recent scandal, the betting scam, where 2 Tory candidates and 2 party officials are being probed for betting on the date of the UK election, which is allowed over there, but these 4 Conservatives may have placed the bets while having inside information about Sunak's plans, and betting with insider knowledge is still a crime. That is the latest Tory blunder that Sunak was forced to apologise for. So Starmer, of course, capitalised on that.
I think over the last 14 years, politics has become too much about self-entitlement and MPs thinking about what they can get for themselves. And one of the important choices, and the thing that I would like to do if I'm elected Prime Minister, is to reset politics so that politics returns to public service.
So who won the debate? A survey after the face-off said it ended at 50-50. While there was no clear winner here, Starmer is on course to win the election next week. The most telling moment of the debate may have been this, when someone asked, "Are you two really the best we've got?" It sums up the mood ahead of the British elections.
Our next story is a tale of 2 neighbours of India, Sri Lanka and the Maldives. One of them is turning a corner after suffering an economic collapse. The other could be slipping into a debt crisis. Let's start with Sri Lanka first. Yesterday, Colombo had some good news to share. It has struck a deal with creditor nations. Sri Lanka has managed to renegotiate a large chunk of its debt. The loans are worth $10 billion. About 5.8 billion is owed to a group of 17 countries. This includes countries like India and the members of the Paris Club like France, Japan and the US. China chose to sit out of this platform. It has struck a separate agreement with Colombo. That takes care of loans worth $4.2 billion. This restructuring helps Sri Lanka immensely. Loan payments will be postponed until 2028. After that, Sri Lanka will have time until 2043 to repay this debt. That too on concessional terms. So overall, Sri Lanka's debt burden has been reduced. The job is not done yet. Some commercial loans are yet to be renegotiated. But this is a win for Colombo. Sri Lanka can now start focusing on development projects again.
Now that we have achieved a crucial milestone in debt restructuring, there are legal opportunities for these countries to resume all projects funded by foreign loans. Moreover, we can look forward to initiating many new development projects.
It was a bitter road to recovery for Sri Lanka. The island nation went bankrupt in 2022. It ran out of foreign exchange. Sri Lanka was plunged into chaos. From food to fuel and cooking gas, there was severe shortage of many essentials. Hospitals had run out of drugs. Critical surgeries had to be delayed. Massive protests broke out across the country. It led to the ouster of the powerful Rajapaksas. Mahinda Rajapaksa, the then Prime Minister, resigned. His brother, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, fled the country. The crisis was that severe. It was during this time India stepped up to help Sri Lanka. It extended at least $4 billion worth of aid and helped to stabilize the country. Sri Lanka's economic collapse served as a cautionary tale for the region, especially for those who borrowed heavily from China and remain financially vulnerable. The Maldives finds itself in a similar situation, and it appears they haven't taken any lessons. Yesterday, a leading credit agency downgraded its debt. We are talking about Fitch. It believes the long-term debt of the Maldives carries more risk now. Now, they released this assessment yesterday. It highlights 3 problems: falling foreign reserves, high debt repayment bills, and continued need for financing. Simply put, the debt levels are high and the Maldives is not generating enough revenue to close the gap. Earlier this year, the IMF had warned about this too. That's the International Monetary Fund. It warned Mali against looming debt distress. The IMF has advised the Maldives to raise revenues, cut spending, and reduce debt. Otherwise, it faces the risk of a major economic crisis. Last year, the foreign debt of the Maldives crossed $4 billion. That's more than 100% of its GDP. Clearly, the Moizu government has its work cut out. They need to start paying attention to the economy. Now let's look at Kenya. Tensions are still running high in the East African nation. Chaos broke out on Tuesday. At least 23 people were killed during the nationwide protests. The protesters breached parliament and set parts of it on fire. The public anger finally compelled President William Ruto to back down. He rejected his own government's controversial finance bill and promised to refrain from imposing new taxes. This means the protesters were successful, but the demonstrations haven't died down yet. In fact, a new call was issued today under the hashtag Occupy State House. That is Kenya's presidential palace. Protesters threatened to storm the State House as well because they want Ruto to resign. To prevent this, the Kenyan government called in the armed forces. The military was deployed in Nairobi's central business district. Riot police could be seen in every corner. They have arrested a number of protesters today in Nairobi and other parts of Kenya. But amid this heavy police deployment, some troops were missing. About 400 Kenyan officers were mobilizing thousands of kilometers away in the Caribbean nation of Haiti. Because while their home country is in turmoil, they have a different task. These Kenyan troops are leading a multinational task force, which aims to bring Haiti's gang violence problem under control. Here's our report.
on Tuesday as the Kenyan protests descended into chaos. About 400 Kenyan police officers were descending into something else. They made their way off a Kenya Airways plane and stood on the tarmac at the international airport in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. Each Kenyan police officer was decked in camouflage and Kevlar, wearing a beige tactical ballistic helmet and carrying an assault rifle, either an M4 or an AK. It was a show of force and a message that the peacekeepers had arrived. These Kenyan troops are going to be leading an international task force. Their mission? Providing security to Haiti and defeating the gangs that have overrun the Caribbean country. Violent gangs have taken over various parts of Haiti. They control about 80% of the capital, Port-au-Prince. The gangs even forced Prime Minister Ariel Henry to resign. Haiti's current Prime Minister is this man, Gary Conille, and he personally welcomed the Kenyan troops yesterday.
From as far away as East Africa, the people of Kenya have heard the cries and sufferings of the Haitian people, and they are here in a spirit of solidarity with our police. The first contingent has been mobilized and is solidly in place to accompany and support Haitian strategies to regain our security, house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, town by town.
The Kenyans will be in charge of a 2,500-member task force. According to Conille, they will go house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, and town by town to eradicate the gang menace in Haiti. The Kenya-led mission has drawn mixed reactions from the locals.
If the Kenyan forces arrive in Haiti, with the support of the Americans, I believe that they will bring about a change. The people will support them.
It is not the foreigners that will solve our problems. It is up to us to come up with solutions. But still, we accept the help because we cannot go anywhere because so many areas of the country are lawless.
This is the fourth major foreign military intervention in Haiti. Obviously, the previous three didn't work. But the big difference this time is that the foreign force is being led by Kenya. Troops have been deployed despite Nairobi's domestic issues. Let's hope that the Kenya-led mission succeeds in bringing peace to Haiti.
Now let's talk about loneliness. It's not the same as being alone. It is not about how many people are around, but how you feel, and it may impact your stroke risk. According to a new study, and the first of its kind, loneliness may increase the risk of a stroke by as much as 56%. And this is not the only problem it causes. Loneliness can impact your health in surprising ways. So how does it affect your mental and physical well-being, and why? Here's a report.
15 million. That's how many people suffer a stroke worldwide each year. Of these, 5 million people die. Another 5 million are left permanently disabled. Stroke is one of the leading causes of mortality and long-term disability worldwide. It's your brain's version of a heart attack, so it's critical, time-sensitive, and life-threatening. And do you know what increases the risk of a stroke? It's loneliness. As surprising as it seems, according to a new study, loneliness can increase the risk of a stroke by as much as 56%. This is the first study of its kind to find such a link between the two, but not the first to show how loneliness can impact one's health. Loneliness is a major global threat. It comes with mental and physical implications. But before we get to that, let's define loneliness. It's not the same as being alone. It's not the same as social isolation either. It's the gap between the level of connectedness you want and what you have. So loneliness is subjective, and it's not all bad. In fact, feeling lonely is important. In small doses, it works like hunger or thirst. It's a sign that you're missing something. But chronic loneliness, much like chronic hunger, can be deadly. Why? Thanks to evolution, it has made the human brain seek safety in numbers, so loneliness is seen as a threat. This triggers a fight or flight response in the body. Stress hormones are released, blood sugar levels rise, heart rate increases, and so does blood pressure. Fewer antibodies are released, meaning loneliness takes a toll on the body. What's the result? Higher risk of insomnia, depression, muscle inflammation, heart disease, dementia, addiction, and even suicide. According to research, loneliness increases the risk of early death by 39%. It's as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day and more lethal than consuming 6 alcoholic drinks a day. Here's another shocking statistic for you. Loneliness kills far more people in the West each year than terrorists and murderers, because loneliness is a silent killer. So, how can we deal with it? What makes someone lonely is often unique to them, but this doesn't mean that loneliness is an individual problem. 33% of adults are lonely across the world. Most of them belong to Brazil, followed by Turkey, India, Saudi Arabia, and Italy. Meanwhile, the Netherlands, Czech Republic, and Croatia are some of the least lonely nations, with loneliness levels below 10%. So the numbers vary, but what do they tell us? That loneliness is prevalent across the world. And this makes it a policy issue. Some countries know it already. The UK, Japan, and Sweden have ministers of loneliness. Meanwhile, some nations have employed other creative measures. The UK, Sweden, Ireland, and Australia have adopted a chatty bench, which is a park bench where strangers can talk to each other. So the solutions might differ, but it's time to give the problem some real thought. The Beatles already suggested a good starting point. All the lonely people, where do they all come from? Where do they all belong?
For our next story, let's go back in history. It's the late 1990s. Internet was booming, and with it came the dot-com bubble. Any company with .com in its name grew too fast. It did not matter if the business was sound or if it was financially viable. Take Pets.com, for example. It sold pet supplies online. The company rode the .com wave. It attracted big-name investors, including Amazon. In 2000, the company raises $82 million in an IPO. But 9 months later, it went bankrupt. Why? Because a catchy domain name can't be a substitute for a viable business model. In the ever-evolving landscape of technology, every season brings with it a new trend. Some of these are innovative. Others are more about the hype. So what's the breakout technology of 2024? Ask anyone, and they will tell you it's artificial intelligence. AI is the new darling of the tech world. In 2022, artificial intelligence entered our daily lives. 2023 made it the toast of the town. And this year, it is getting more and more popular. By the next few years, it's likely to become an integral part of our daily lives. AI is transforming our lives, the way we work, the way we eat, the way we travel. It is a game changer, and companies are going down the AI rabbit hole. They are ditching other ventures. They are focusing solely on artificial intelligence. But is it more glitter and less gold? Take Amazon, for example. It launched its Just Walk Out stores. Now, the concept itself is simple. You go into any of their stores, you pick the products you want to buy, you put them in your cart, and you just walk out with it. The cart will figure out what products you have added, your account will be charged accordingly. So it's seamless, and you don't have to stand in long queues. Sounds genius, right? Amazon said its system was powered by artificial intelligence. But it turns out that may not have been true. Reports suggest that Amazon employs around 1,000 workers in India. They watch people shop. They review their purchases at stores. So it wasn't AI doing the heavy lifting. It was actually humans. Now, Amazon has denied these claims. They said those employees are just normal reviewers. But it shows you how any AI claim must be taken with a pinch of salt. The phenomenon itself is called AI washing. It is the modern-day alchemy. Companies sprinkle a little bit of artificial intelligence magic dust on their offerings, and voila, their products seem more advanced than they are. Now, don't be mistaken. Artificial intelligence can revolutionize industries, but that potential is often lost, especially in the noise of the marketing hyperbole. Take 2022, for example. 10% of companies mentioned AI in their pitch. Fast forward to 2023, and the number was up to 25%. Founders believe if they have to draw investors, they must keep talking AI. Some companies claim to use AI when actually they are using less sophisticated computing. Others overstate their achievements. They say their AI solutions are operational. In reality, it's just in the ideation stage. Now, some other firms just add an AI chatbot to their roster, and that way they can claim that they are on top of their AI game. But look at this study. 40% of so-called AI startups don't even use AI, and regulators are waking up to this. The UK has strict laws against AI washing. The US too charged 2 companies for misleading claims. So the lesson here is clear. Artificial intelligence holds immense promise, but the road to realizing that promise is fraught with overstatements and misconceptions. So the next time a company touts its latest AI-driven innovation, remember to take it all with a healthy pinch of skepticism. Our last story tonight comes from South Africa. The country is home to a large majority of the world's rhinos. For this reason, it is a hotspot for poaching, mostly thanks to Asia, where these rhino horns are used in traditional medicines. But now scientists have found a new way to curb poaching. They are injecting radioactive material into live rhino horns. Here's a report.
This is Beckham, a 1.7-ton rhino named after the English footballer David Beckham. And now he's making headlines the world over. He has become the first rhino to have a radioactive pellet drilled into his horn.
Yeah, what I've done is I've just put in 2 tiny little radioactive chips into the horn.
Why? To curb poaching in South Africa. The country is home to 80% of the world's rhinos. That's about 15,000 rhinos. This makes the country a hotspot for poaching. Every 20 hours in South Africa, a rhino dies for its horn. These poached horns are trafficked across the world. They are sometimes sold as status symbols or used in traditional medicines. This is mainly driven by demand from Asia, particularly in Vietnam and China, where these horns are highly sought after in the black market. Their price by weight rivals that of cocaine and gold. But rhinos are an endangered species. There have been efforts to reduce poaching for decades now. There are global trade rules against extinction. The South African government has tried poisoning the horns. They have tried dehorning rhinos, but the battle to defeat rhino poaching has taken a turn for the worse. They have not only failed to deter poachers, but the numbers are only increasing. Just last year, 499 rhinos were killed in South Africa. That's up by 11% since 2022. So now, scientists have come up with an ingenious solution. They are injecting radioactive material into live rhino horns. And with this, they are hitting 2 birds with 1 radioactive pellet. First, the injection poisons the horn, making it bad for human consumption. This depletes the value of horns on illegal markets. Secondly, the radiation makes the horns easy to detect. Most border control points have radiation detectors. So the idea is radioactive horns will set off the detectors and alert the authorities.
Detect these horns as they are.
We tried to poison the horns. That didn't work. Dehorning doesn't work. Nothing works. But this is something you can't destroy. You can't throw it away. And it petrifies people, you know. Oh, it's radioactive, so we got to run. That's what we want.
Scientists say this method is completely safe. During the process, rhinos are put to sleep so they don't feel any pain. The dose is strong enough to set off the alarms of the detectors, but it doesn't cause any damage to the animals. So far, only one rhino has been injected with the dose. 19 more are slated to receive the injection. Only time will tell if radioactive rhinos are able to fight back against poaching.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. In Washington, high temperatures melt a replica wax statue of Abraham Lincoln. Ballet dancers perform by the River Thames to spread hope amid the growing climate crisis. And in Indonesia, people scale an active volcano to pray for rain. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1871, the yen became the official currency of Japan. It was first introduced as part of Japan's modernization efforts. The yen replaced a complex system of local currencies. It was modeled after the European decimal currency systems. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.
On the show today, the T20 World Cup bandwagon has moved across to the West Indies. What can we expect